This Candid shot entry is entitled How to Be an Elite Player. I assume a lot of people will click on this because they want their son or daughter to be an elite player. Well, this is as elite as it gets. It's in another sport, but it's applicable to basketball, big time. So I don't know anything about skiing. I don't ski. I'm afraid to ski, but I read a lot. And there's a skier named Michaela Schifrin. She's an American. I'm going to spell the last name. Schiffrin. Michaela Schifrin. And this is from an article in the magazine it's actually called The Last Magazine. So if you Google The Last Magazine and Michaela Schifrin, this will pop up. And I'm just going to read some of the things that I bullet pointed from this article because it totally applies to basketball. She is the most elite competitive skier in the world. Now, this was a few years ago. I know because I've been following it a little bit. Again, I'm not a skier. She's still in the upper echelons of the top class skiers in the world. She trains 8 to 10 times as much as she competes. She trains 8 to 10 times as much as she competes. That's kind of what basics does, right? We are much more interested in the repetition and the development of sharp skills than we are in the outcomes of the games. She is a rigid and reliable fundamentalist. What does that mean? She's interested in how the actual act of going faster matters, right? She takes her time when she practices. She repeats over and over and over again. So she's a reliable fundamentalist. Consistency and technique are more valued than flair. She's much more interested in the consistency and the technique required to compete than in the fanciness that some athletes try to bring to the equation. She takes a full month off every winter, does no traveling at all, and commits to refining her basic techniques. Can you imagine? One of the best skiers in the world takes a month off in the winter when the whole ski thing's going on, I guess, over in Europe or wherever they ski, and she takes that time to refine her technique. Many of her competitors are worn out, exhausted, at high risk of injury, and often because of injury, they don't compete, right? They're hurt. So she is, I think she's had some injuries recently, but when this article came out and she was basically dominating the sport, she competed significantly less than the other competitors her age. She often talks about rhythm and how her skis are like tools. Okay, this comes as it does in basketball, purely from repetition. The best players will tell you that the ball feels like it's part of their hand. There's a great story from Steve Nash a few years ago. Those may remember Steve Nash, two-time MVP. He's from Canada. He was a great soccer player. When he began to play basketball, he had a funny comment. He said, "I felt like using my hands was unfair." Because his footwork was so incredible because of soccer that the use of his hands seemed unfair to him. Isn't that interesting? Because basketball is all about hand skills and foot skills. And then the last thing I'm going to comment on is she is fixated on form and consistency. She has been described as racing's Mozart. We're not saying that your kid is going to reach this level, but what we are saying is your kid will not reach this level without these required fundamental training techniques. And Basics is not the only one that does this. I think we're the best at what we do, but there are other organizations that do this. Just understand, the 8 to 10 times as much practice is maybe the most important thing from this. Work those kids, understand that the repetition is required, and then don't emphasize results so much. Focus on the outcome of the practices and the measurements that we include in our training. Thank you for listening, and we hope that we see you again soon.